A lot of silicon news this morning, sort of. Not really, but
No, there is.
I mean, there kind of is. Like I was thinking about like what's on the agenda. Well, Phil Spencer talked about how, he called up AMD's CEO. What's her name? Ends in Sue. Lisa. Lisa Sue.
Is it Lisa Sue? Okay.
Is it?
That was Lisa. I think it's. I had Lu in my head for the last name Lou, but maybe
No, it's Lisa Sue.
Lisa
Yep.
Sue. Okay.
And he's like, hey, I need more chips. And she was
Yeah.
probably like, yeah, me too. And
Yeah, no, she said, yeah, so does Sony. Click.
and so does the.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the bottleneck is actually somebody pointed this out in this comment, but then I did a little more research into it, and I think they were correct. Is that TSMC is the 7-nanometer fab that is sort of like the premier entity in this, and they're using them. I believe Apple is using them, and I believe Qualcomm is using them. And there's only so many factory or wafers coming down the line. So there you
It's
go.
only a matter of time before Intel's using them.
Yeah. If they go the path the investors want them to go to, like AMD did.
Right.
And then
I literally just got in from outside, like I'm still chilly.
and then there's Qualcomm, who announced their CEO is changing. It's it's Christian something.
Up against it is Cristiano, I think.
Cristiano, yes, that is it. Is taking over from the individual who
Cristiano Amon.
Yes. Yeah. Which, if you've watched any of the Qualcomm events, you've seen him
all over it.
Yeah. So that takes place in June. And then the third silicon wafer related incident is you now have the Mac Mini in your possession.
Yeah.
Did that
I'm
arrive
proud
faster?
to announce. What's that?
Did that arrive? I thought it was supposed to take longer to get to.
Yeah, a lot faster. So I am coming to you today, Brad, from the future.
Oh, wow.
I'm using it right now.
Oh, so that makes sense why your audio
didn't work earlier.
Yeah.
you're like, you're on the wrong mic. I'm like, So originally it was supposed to come January 14th.
Mm-hmm.
Late last week, I got an email update, and they said it's coming on the 7th, I think, which was Thursday. Okay. And then yesterday morning, I woke up. I had an email. It said it's coming today. It's on the truck. Okay, great.
Isn't that cute?
I ended up being really busy yesterday. It was kind of strange. I had a couple of big, like really long meetings. And then, because it's like CES next week, right? So, anyway, yeah. So, I got to tell you, I'm probably going to return this.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's not because there's anything wrong with it. I bought this to save some money and to try. I wanted to try virtualization. That's the big thing for me.
Yeah.
And I figured 16. I could save money by getting this one and get 16 gigs, which is $200 more expensive. And I sort of realized just setting this thing up, like I'm never going to use this thing. Like I'm never going to use it. Like it's so inconvenient because I don't use a Mac every day. Obviously, I use a PC, and switching between my normal setup and this is just a pain in the ass. And then, also like the non-standard keyboard stuff is like a unbelievably frustrating kind of thing. I can't tell you the keyboard combination off the top of my head, but I write in Word, and anyone who is a touch typist understands that you can. I don't even know. I literally don't know how to describe it. It's like Shift Alt or something, Shift Control, and then arrow key, and you can select text.
Oh yeah.
Because the keyboard's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So Control Windows key Alt on Apple is probably Alt Command Control or something. It's all reversed. What it does is it selects stuff in the ribbon, and then it changes the font. And it's like, it's just stuff like that. It's not Apple's fault.
It's just you have decades of habits.
And I'm using Windows equipment with a Mac laptop, or the Mac device. It's not Apple's. That has nothing to do with it. But the thing that people are going to want to know about, I'll have a second article today, of course, is performance compatibility. And I will say, I mean, for whatever it's worth, I'm trying to find one example of this. If anyone who's ever used a Mac before knows that you launch something from the dock, the little guy bounces a couple times, and then eventually the app will kind of get around to showing up. And the native apps that are built into Mac OS, like the store, like I'm doing it right now, like those apps start, in many cases, not all cases, but the little app icon goes to bounce and then come down again. The app is on the screen before the thing reaches the apex. Like that's quick. It's that fast. Yeah. So that stuff is very fast. Moving beyond that, mixed results, right? So I haven't had any. Well, actually, let me look at this one thing I have had a huge problem with. Is OneDrive is OneDrive is my one nightmare. It beach balls every time you touch it, and you have to install I guess it's basically like a plugin or extension for the file system, so that you can get files on demand and mark stuff to be available offline.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. It won't. It just doesn't work. It just does not work. And every time I go to click on OneDrive to do anything related to settings, it beach balls. And then the beach ball is the Mac waiting thing.
Yeah.
It's like a kaleidoscope looking thing. And sometimes it won't even animate. It sits there and it just stops. It won't. And like right now, I left it overnight. I was thinking maybe leave this thing alone. It will kind of catch up. Yeah, OneDrive's going to be a problem. It's fair to say I rely on OneDrive. But I installed all the apps I usually use. Word, Edge. I installed the Canary version so I could get the M1 version of the browser. I have a Paint clone I use called Paint S, which is a Mac App Store app. Photoshop Elements 2018 because that's what I have on the Mac. Whatever, it's fine. But that's an interesting one because it's a big app and it's emulate, or I guess we'll call it translated. And this one to me is more like the normal Mac experience. The little guy bounces.
Yeah.
Bounces, and then it just came up. I don't know if you saw the color change, but you know what? That's normal, and I mean that's normal. That's how Macs.
Yeah, that's how you
been.
perceive it to be.
Yep.
Because you don't know what's on the other side yet.
Yeah, I would say overall it's been except for OneDrive, the software compatibility stuff has been great. This app, the performance has been great for native apps and very good for normal apps. That's good. And hardware-wise, which I actually did first, I mean, it only has 2 USB ports. I mean, it has USB-C ports too, but I have 3 USB-A things I need to plug in, right? So the dongle for my keyboard and mouse, the camera, the webcam, and then the USB interface for the microphone. And so I had to put a USB, like a little dock thing. And I did that when I first turned on the machine, and it's awful how it's hard to understand what they're trying to tell you, but they show the bottom of an Apple mouse, which doesn't even look like a mouse, and it has a little green light switch on it. And then it switches to a sideways profile, like a profile of a keyboard, which doesn't even look like a keyboard. Same thing. That's where the power thing, like they're trying to tell you have to turn on the keyboard and the mouse to use it. And it was plugged in through the dock. So I was like, okay, like maybe the dock's not going to work. I plugged the dongle in directly and it came up. It was fine. Setup took a long time. That's just Apple. It's not M1. Everything I just described works. The mouse, keyboard, you can see, you're seeing it. I mean, it's working. But when we started the call this morning, Brad's like, you're on the wrong mic, which I knew, but the correct mic wasn't showing up in the list. So I went back and I unplugged it from the dock and plugged it in, and then it worked. And it's like, well, okay. So I guess I could sit here and experiment with the different docks, and I could get like a USB-C to USB-A adapter. I probably have 20 of them, and just plug it directly into another port. I could do all kinds of things. But the truth is, I realized so fast, like I don't want this machine. Like I just don't want it. So I'm going to, I always have a Mac, so I'll get something. I'll just get a MacBook Air or something just to have one. But and I'll just get an 8 gig version because this is stupid. But before I get rid of it, I'll review it. And I'll do today. I will install Parallels and try to figure that out. How Windows runs, and I guess you can run the Mac, the Windows 10 and ARM version, and I will try that. But overall, there are things I hate about the Mac. I mean, hate. Like just bringing the thing up, I'm like, oh God, like awful. And then there are things where it's like, one thing that the Mac does really well that Windows doesn't is dark mode. Like dark mode is so consistent and attractive and beautiful on the Mac, and on Windows it's just like helter skelter. It's a disaster. And if anyone doesn't like that kind of bright, clean, iOS looking, Mac OS look they have these days, try dark mode. Dark mode makes it's more professional looking, I think. It's nice. But yeah, OneDrive, if I had wanted to keep this thing, that would be that's the kicker right there. I mean, OneDrive's got to work, and I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, OneDrive is increasing. Well, I guess it's probably about as important as it can get to my workflow. Just because, like when we do show notes or whatever, like I literally have a folder in OneDrive called Transfer, and that's all that I use it for. Is I throw a file in there, and then I can grab it on any PC. Now, when I transfer the podcast back and forth from upstairs, because they're 4 or 5 gig files,
Right.
I do it over the local network. But yeah, OneDrive, that would be tough.
OneDrive is, yeah, it's key. I wrote about my approach to file management, which is totally OCD. I don't recommend it to other people, but the other day, and specifically work related stuff, and I have 2 or 3 folders that I put on, that I link on every PC where I can see it in the quick access view, which in Mac OS Finder is called favorites, whatever. I can do the same thing, but there's a to-do folder, which is articles that I'm working on. There is the folder for the current month where I archive stuff. So every time I finish something, it goes into a folder and it gets, just filed away. And then there's a folder for the book, which I don't put on every single computer because I don't work on it on every single computer. But of those 3 folders, I only sync locally the one folder, the to-do folder. And the point of that is, because, I might be offline on a plane. The point of that this past year has been nonsense. There's no reason to do that at all. I guess I could get away with it here. But, I'd like this to work. It's like just like now I mouse over the OneDrive icon that's up in that menu bar they have at the top, and it pinwheels like the second I get up there. It won't let me click on anything. It's just so yeah. It's I will say fundamentally, and this will be in the thing I write today. It is very clear already that Apple has achieved something with this system that Microsoft has not with Windows 10 on ARM.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Is like, how do you compare it to where Apple is today versus Microsoft?
People who are fans of Windows 10 on ARM will tell you that if you just stick to native and web apps, it's great. And that's actually not strictly true, but it certainly is better than when you're running emulated apps. This system, the reason this is better, and this is... it's messed up, and again, it's not completely universal. I wish I could find another. Let's look at the apps. I'm going to run an app right now that I have never run before, Quicktime Player. This is not a big app, but it's a native, universal app, right? So if I click on this thing, it comes up like this, like it just like explodes onto the screen. Now that's not a big app, so let me actually find a bigger app like that I would never run. Like Numbers is a good example. This is the Apple spreadsheet app. So I click on this thing. This time, yes, it's a bigger app, and then it comes up. So very quick. It's not that explosion, but it's very quick. I would say generally speaking, native M1 apps, especially the ones that come with the system, launch with an alacrity that was never the case on any Mac I've ever used. So it's actually better. Emulated apps, when they work, unlike OneDrive, right, work just as well as they did before. like that experience of that thing bouncing 2 to 7 times is very common. Then the app kind of leisurely pops up, but then you use it and it works fine. Now, I haven't done a lot with Photoshop, but I have taken applications, I've cropped them. In fact, the images, the article I'm going to post today about this thing was done on the Mac, and all the images were processed on the Mac. Everything, and that whole workflow is just as good or bad as it was on the Mac. Like keyboard shortcuts are tough, all that stuff. Now, it hasn't changed, but the speed at which it works is the same. And that is something we cannot say. Both of those things are not true, right? Native compiled apps on Windows 10 and ARM do not run faster than they do on Intel. They don't. They run fine. Emulated apps run slower. Period. That's it. That's the story on the Windows side. On this side, the native apps run faster, load faster, let's put it that way. And the emulated apps appear to be normal. It works great.
So let me ask you this. You have 2 Apple Macs side by side, or Mac Minis, because they're still using the exact same form factor. And, new Coke or Pepsi versus Coke, and you switch them all up, and they say, Paul, use these 2 computers. Which one is the M1? Could you easily tell? Positive or negative?
Maybe I couldn't, right? Because I don't use the Mac every single day, and I don't have another Mac right now that I can put next to it. Actually, technically I do. My daughter's is here, but she has a MacBook Air. So I would say for a Mac Mini, this is off the top of my head. I think you would be able to. It would be subtle, But like I said, those native apps would load faster. And I think it is kind of notable. I mean, it's like I said, you know,
Yeah,
you
I mean
kind
that's
of
kind of the point, is the fact that you didn't come out and say, "Oh yeah, it'd be so much slower." You would easily be able to tell. Is kind of that's a basic win
well,
for Apple.
okay, if you were a Mac guy, probably, yeah. I think from the perspective of a Windows guy, you'd be like, I don't understand what's happening here. It just works. And like, but to me, that is the point.
Yep.
Because you can't say that on Mac, Windows 10 on ARM. Like Windows 10 on ARM will eventually betray you, you know, either with poor performance or compatibility issues, or both, you know. And I look, this OneDrive is not working. I mean, and that's Microsoft just needing to make the M1 version. I mean, it's something that's going to happen. But aside from that, I mean, this stuff just works. This is what Windows 10 on ARM should have been on day one, you know. And it gives me, to their credit, you know, they released something that's not a science experiment. They're like, that we know that normal people are going to buy this thing, have no idea about processor architectures or emulated apps. Well, they will be reminded one way, actually. The first time you run an Intel app, they get a little dialog. We have to install Rosetta. And there's a very small description of what that is. But you just click OK, and it's like, done. And then it just, you know. And I should say, too, the first time you run an Intel app like Photoshop, although, honestly, it runs just as slow now, the first time it does that bounce, it could be 7, 10 times. It's translating it, I guess. And then the subsequent runs, it launches more quickly. But I mean, I'm using, you know, like Edge, like I said, which is native. Word, which I don't know if it's native, but that thing is lickety split. Photoshop, Teams, Skype, you know, other than OneDrive, everything seems to be fine.
I was gonna say interesting. I don't know. I got nothing. I mean,
It's good, but you know, it's still a Mac. I mean, it's the thing. Like,
right.
So for people freaking out about this, it still has all the problems of Macs, you know, and there are frustrating things that are just related to muscle memory in my case or whatever. Obviously, the scrolling is backwards. You get, you know, there's things you can overcome, and then there are things I just, you know, there are things I just don't care for it, you know. But as far as a technical accomplishment, it's great. This is exactly what people were looking for. It's nice.
Yep. I don't know. That's all I got. I mean,
yeah. And I can't test battery life. That's the other problem, not getting a portable. So I think I gotta figure this out.
I wonder when the M2 comes out.
Yeah, I just don't like not having a Mac. I guess my idea was like, I don't use it that much anyway. What's the difference? But the truth is, it would have been so much easier just yesterday if I could have brought it upstairs or in the other room and sat on a couch while I was doing something else and just, you know, but now I have to be in front of this thing.
Right.
And it's, yeah, I mean, it sounds obvious, but.
Yeah, I can kind of relate to having to be in front of this thing.